Thanks for tuning in to Proline TV, the Our Football Network, as we get the opportunity that I've been waiting for quite some time, and that is to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles, not just because they're defending Super Bowl champs, but because we just haven't had the opportunity to be fortunate enough to land, a really good analyst, someone that's been covering the team for a while. It's been the one team over the years that, we've had guests here and there, but we haven't had any consistent guests. And I'm certainly hoping that this first one will lead to many more as Anthony Miller joins us from Inside the Eagles. And he's, of course, Inside the Eagles is with Fansided. Anthony is the editor of the site. Anthony, thanks a lot for doing this.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. I appreciate the time and looking forward to talking some Eagles.
Yeah, anytime I get someone on for the first time too, I like to do a little introduction. So tell us a little bit about your background, and you are an Eagles fan.
Yes, I'm a diehard Eagles fan. I know I was just telling you I live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but I was born and raised in Pennsylvania, so I did grow up an Eagles fan. But been in the sports writing business for about 6 years. I actually started as a TV news reporter first 2.5 years out of college. I kind of dipped out of it and decided to get into sales, but the writing stuff is kind of what I've been building up towards for the last 6 years. Right now, I run the site for Inside the Eagles on Fansided, like you mentioned. I also write for the Vikings Age on Fansided as a contributor. Work for Athlon Sports, writing for the Vikings there. Cover sports video games for esports on SI. I cover the Buffalo Bills for on SI. And then a lot of people may know my work from covering the UFL and the CFL as a credential reporter for the last 5 to 6 years. So I got my hat on a little bit of everything when it comes down to football. So
Sure.
Hopefully I have a little bit of knowledge about it. Hopefully.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. Anyway, I want to remind everybody here on Proline TV that the Our website, ourlads.com, you can go to the website. We'll have a link in the description of the on-demand video when this one ends, and you'll be able to link up, go right to the website and order the 2025 version of the draft review guide. This is last year's guide. It'll be out in about a month. And these types of interviews that we always do right before the draft will help us to put in information regarding the teams, obviously, that we cover, all 32 teams in the NFL. The draft guide was out last month, of course. I think we're at about a couple of months now since the draft. And of course, that is also a big reason why we'd love to have these interviews. I don't represent the Philadelphia Eagles for the draft guide, but still, it's always great to get knowledgeable with every team. And I'm looking forward to this. So let's get the show on the road. And since we haven't spoken yet all offseason or forever, Anthony, let's kind of do a little bit of both. Let's kind of talk about free agency and the draft. So let me pop up the Our Philadelphia Eagles depth chart, and let's get started because with the draft picks, and it's interesting that it's kind of rare that a Super Bowl team, of course, I mean, even if we're just calling it a top contender, but the Super Bowl team would have as many draft picks as the Eagles had. I mean, I'd like to look at that, that history and find out, like, what is the average number of draft picks for Super Bowl winners? Because I bet you it's a lot lower than the amount of picks that the Eagles have. Why did they target? I mean, that's a good way to start this interview. Why do you think they targeted so many draft picks? Did it have to do with the fact that they just look at the back end of their depth chart and they realize that they have to replenish a lot of young talent?
Yeah, I mean, this has been the message for the Eagles all offseason, is that Howie Roseman, the GM, wanted to start younger guys. I think they kind of felt like over the last 3 to 4 years, this Eagles team's been kind of maybe too reliant on veterans or older players. And the one thing about Howie Roseman that he's done so well is being able to kind of manipulate trades and kind of make it through a way that he can, gather up on draft picks. And the Eagle scouting department has done such a phenomenal job over the last 3 to 4 years. I mean, you look at that time between their first Super Bowl to about 2020, they really struggled and missed out on a lot of guys. Like they drafted like Jalen Reagor when they could have had Justin Jefferson. They missed out on DK Metcalf. So I think over the last 3 to 4 years, there seems to be a real high importance on the scouting department for the Eagles, and they've done such a phenomenal job with that. But this offseason is about, we need to get younger. We need to they've had an average of 8 to 10 draft picks per year over the last 3 to 4 years. We need to give some of these younger guys an opportunity to, get some playing time, and let's see what we have in them. So you got guys like, the Sidney Browns who, this could be the year that he gets an opportunity. Jalen Hunt's going to get an opportunity now with Bryce Huff gone. So they want to see what they have in the younger guys this year so that they can, maybe try to figure out, are these guys for real, or do they need to go back in free agency? Plus, it also probably doesn't help they have a lot of dead money and a lot of money they still owe to players that are no longer on the team. So they have to be a little bit smart with salary cap wise, and rather put their marbles into younger guys who are maybe a little cheaper than the veterans that they paid a lot of money for over the last 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, and that might answer some questions that fans could have regarding, well, what did they do there? Why'd they go with that guy over that guy? And then that's, a lot of times that is the reason, but sometimes we lose sight of that, especially with the fringe guys at the back of the depth chart. Okay, so yeah, let's pop that up here again, because I want to start. Tell you what, let's start with the way that the Eagles started their draft. So let's go ahead on defense. And it's interesting because their top 2 guys on defense, and they did draft the first 5 guys were on defense. So,
yeah.
But the first 2 have a couple of similar traits I noticed. Both Campbell and Makuba both have the ability to blitz. And I know Makuba a little bit more of an issue with his tackling ability. I know Campbell's had that as well, not as much as Makuba as far as the scouting report. But I did find that interesting that I noticed that the 2 top guys they drafted both had extensive experience in blitzing and getting after the quarterback, especially Campbell.
Yeah, Campbell's really good at getting after the quarterback. It is interesting because I think some people maybe thought he may have been, coming off the edge, but it looks like Vic Fangio wants to put him at inside linebacker, give him a chance to kind of learn the defense and give him the time he needs to develop, because he's going to need a little more time. He's got the injury that he's dealing with, so he's not going to be available until probably mid-August. So that's going to put him behind the 8 ball already. Right. So yeah, he's probably not going to get a ton of playing time, at least to start off the season. So he may be right now. It looks like Nakobe Dean is also trying to recover. So with those 2 guys out, I think Jeremiah Trotter Jr. ends up stepping up to the plate and maybe getting some more playing time, at least early off the bat, until Dean is healthy and Campbell is healthy. So the inside linebacker position is kind of an interesting. They're in an interesting predicament right now where it may be all on Zach Vaughn to kind of carry the load. But I think Eagle fans are going to really start to figure out if Jeremiah Trotter Jr. is going to be able to step into the footsteps of his dad and be able to step up, because he may get more playing time through preseason, maybe the beginning of the year. Really just depends on how quickly Dean recovers, and then if Campbell can jump in right off the bat. But for Campbell, I would suspect it would take a little more time.
Well, let's continue with the linebackers. So you mentioned Trotter, and again, he was a rookie, 5th-round pick. And I was a little bit surprised he lasted until round 5, but hey, what a perfect match for the Eagles. That's great. It's always a great story when something like that happens. So there's still a lot of hope that, and again, this is going to be his chance. Like you said, still a lot of hope that Trotter might have an impact and be a really good, potentially even starter down the road. And look, if he gets the job early on, hey, it's up to him. If he can keep it, then why not, right? That's what it's all about sometimes. That's why you always want to stay healthy.
Yeah, well, the interesting part is I think they want Trotter Jr. to work out, because Nakobe Dean's situation is so interesting just because he's a bit injury prone. So while he's got all the talent in the world to play, the last couple of years he's had some serious injuries that's really kept him off the field. So I think there's a little bit of concern on whether he has the durability to kind of stay with it. Now, when he's on the field, I think Dean, by far, him and Bond absolutely 100% makes sense at inside linebacker. But there's that lack of trust right now with Dean being able to stay on the field. So, and I think that's kind of what caused guys like Bryce Huff to depart as well, because the Eagles need guys that they can trust to be on the field. So if Bond can, if Dean can stay healthy, I think they'll be okay at inside linebacker, but if not, they really need Trotter to step up, and he's got an opportunity to do that in preseason and prove himself. He did played a lot more special teams last year, so he didn't get as many reps on the defensive side of the ball. So I think that will be a little bit of concern as there's kind of a lack of experience at inside linebacker, but hopefully Dean will be able to recover and get into it. But if not, then this could be Trotter's year to kind of step up to the plate.
Okay, and then let's stay at inside linebacker because they added Mondin, another Georgia kid, big surprise. So they added Mondin, converted safeties, played linebacker the last several years for the Bulldogs. What do you think that they like the most about him? Because obviously, as a converted safety, he's got elite ball skills and all that. But he also seems to have, like Campbell, that type of chase speed, sideline to sideline type of speed. So anything specific that they liked and the reason, besides attending the University of Georgia, of why Mondin's on the team?
I mean, the Eagles love athletic linebackers. So anyone that can have that combination, being able to rush the passer, have that speed versus be able to drop back into coverage, that's something that's important to them. So I know Mondi's gotten some playing time as well during OTAs so far. He's getting some reps. He may get some playing time. I don't think he'll end up being a starter, right off the bat if the Campbell and Dean injury ends up affecting the inside linebacker position. But he'll see a lot of playing time during the preseason and could be a part of that rotation. But the Eagles need, for Vic Fangio's defense, they need athletic linebackers who can just do more than just stop the run. They got to be able to drop back into coverage. They got to be able to rush the passer. They got to be able to. I think Fangio likes to play puzzle pieces and move guys around throughout the defense, whether they get them outside, get them inside. So I think he might be able to do that for this Eagles team.
Okay, well, it looks like some of these kids are going to definitely get a chance, and so they have a lot younger players, at least at that spot, which again, as you said, was definitely a big goal for the team. Bond, though, having his veteran presence back is huge. Okay, so let's now move on to Makuba. So the second round pick in the backfield, in the defensive backfield, is Makuba. And once again, as I mentioned, he's been known to blitz. He's got that type of skill. But for the most part, what really sticks out to Makuba seems to be, he's a smart guy. He seems to be really good at awareness and recognition, being able to pick things up from the quarterback, all that kind of stuff that you like from someone playing that position that he plays. There are some issues, though, in his game, as I mentioned, the tackling and so forth. But what specifically did they like about him, and why do you think that they targeted him as high as the second round?
He kind of reminds me of a younger CJ Gardner-Johnson. Maybe not as maybe as established as he is, but he reminds me a lot of him, and I think that's what they like. That's what they like about him. I think he can step in and be like a CJ Gardner-Johnson. He's great in coverage. He's a ball hawk. He can be able to create turnovers. And like you said, I think there's some things he needs to clean up tackling wise, but that's something that's simple that Vic Fangio and his coaching staff can be able to work with him on. So I mean, when I see him on tape, I mean, this guy flies around the ball. I mean, he's just really smart with, being able to, get to the receivers and be able to make plays. So I like what I've seen out of him. I don't think he'll come in and be a starter right off the bat. I know right now he's competing with Sidney Brown for that starting safety role. I think the Eagles are probably leaning a little more towards Sidney Brown just because he's been in the defense a little bit more than he has. And I think Vic Fangio really cherishes guys that have experience. But he did mention yesterday that Tristan McCollum is also in the conversation and people shouldn't sleep on him. So okay. I think McCollum kind of has, I don't know if McCollum is actually going to start. I don't know what his chances are, but it was interesting that when some of the reporters had asked Fangio about the safety position and how Makumba and Brown were doing, he went out of his own way to say, well, Tristan's in the conversation too, which is kind of an interesting tell, even though Tristan McCollum has not really taken any first team reps during OTAs, but it may be something to monitor during training camp. I still like Sidney Brown to start, and then Makuba probably gets into that rotation to get some playing time. but McCollum maybe be able to pull an upset because he did play longer last year. And the one thing that Fangio said was that he was worried about Brown maybe not getting those reps last year because he did miss time with the injury, and McCollum has a little more experience. So
Okay.
maybe that might give him an advantage. And Makuba's kind of like the middleman right now in between them. So I still see Brown starting, but McCollum could pull up an upset and maybe be in the conversation to start.
Yeah, because I don't think there's a position on the team that may have some unknown factor, especially talent wise. And again, just because you don't get drafted or you drafted late, whatever, that doesn't mean you can't be a good pro. I mean, take a look at Blankenship, and Blankenship, of course, is a great story because of the fact that he had such a great career at Middle Tennessee, and he was just like big star player. But it's like, he just plays down there in one of those small schools, and and that doesn't, it really doesn't work out very often. And just the fact that it has, it's a nice story. But yeah, is this the one position where you think that is there a possibility that maybe they bring in a veteran? There's still some safeties out there in free agency, because when I look at the depth chart here, besides Makuba and Brown, and look, again, you got a successful CFA in Blankenship. McCollum's another UDFA. Seen is a guy that is kind of a cast-off, higher pick, looking for a new home kind of deal. Sam as well. And Maxon Hook is a kid that was, a 3-time first-team All-MAC selection, maybe limited to the box, but still, there's some talent there. So there's some opportunities as well. But do you think that that's a position that they might be looking to add another veteran?
I think the only one I really see, and I think everyone's been talking about it the last couple of months, is Justin Simmons, just because of his experience with Vic Fangio and being able to work in his defense. That would be the only one that would make sense to me. Otherwise, I think the Eagles' MO is we want to play the younger guys. And
Okay.
I would say something to think about with the safety position is Fangio has talked about Cooper DeJean playing some safety a little bit. Now, it hasn't happened at OTAs yet, but it looks like Cooper DeJean could be moved around quite a bit depending on what kind of packages they run with their defense. So we could see Cooper DeJean jump into safety. We could see him in the slot. We can see him at the right cornerback position. So I would just say maybe watch out for that. There's some times where he could play safety, but I think for the most part, I think do they want to spend the money on a high level safety like someone like Justin Simmons, who's probably going to command $5 to $10 million for the year? Do they want to spend that kind of money on somebody who's 30 plus years old, or do they want to see what they have with Sidney Brown or Tristan McCollum or Makumba and see if those guys can start? They seem to be trending a little more towards let's get younger, let's see what the young guys have, let's figure out if we have a good spot at the position. If we don't, then maybe we spend the next offseason trying to, find somebody else.
And when you win a Super Bowl, it's a lot easier to be a little bit patient with your younger players and give them a shot because you don't have the pressure that 31 other teams have. Okay, so let's talk about, by the way, so McCollum, though, is clearly the guy that if we're looking for one of these players that are unfamiliar to anyone outside of Philly, that's the guy to keep an eye on.
Yeah, he seems to be. Yeah, he seems to be the sleeper pick for them right now. And I mean, there's nothing bad about him at all. I think he's a solid tackler. He's got good instincts. I just don't know if I would per se say that he would be the starter. But I'll be honest, I'm also not like 100% the biggest fan of Sidney Brown either. He may have high PFF scores for or grades for what he did at the safety position last year, but I think he's average at best. So I would probably still start him this year, but I really hope that Makumba can develop quickly and kind of take over that safety position maybe next year. And then him and Reed Blankenship can hold those positions for a while in that backfield.
Well, let's stay in the secondary then, because there was another draft pick, Mac McWilliams, in round 5. What can you tell us about the reasoning of taking McWilliams there?
Solid in coverage. I think he may be kind of underlooked. I know the Eagles like to, find those guys that maybe don't get talked about as often that, can step up in coverage. And, he might be able to, he's been getting reps and, from what I've heard, has been nothing but good things so far out of OTAs. I haven't seen video of it, but from what the beat reporters are saying, he's he's getting some rotation play, and he seems to be doing pretty well in coverage. So he definitely won't be a starter, but he seems to fit kind of that slot corner position pretty well. So
Okay.
if Cooper DeJean ends up moving, playing some position maybe outside on the right, then maybe McWilliams can jump in and be that slot corner. But Perry Nicholson's also a guy that has an opportunity to maybe steal some time from McWilliams as well, because he's been getting some starting time. So I think Nicholson and McWilliams are going to probably battle for some playing time in the slot. But it sounds like right now they like McWilliams, but I think Nicholson is getting some more playing time in the secondary, so he has a better chance of maybe getting in that rotation.
Interesting. Perry Nickerson. Okay. By the way, he had a 5th-round grade when he came out, but he's been around with a bunch of clubs, I noticed there, for quite a long time. So, but it makes more sense then, the McWilliams draft, because like you said, if they do have that in mind to move Cooper around, yeah, they're going to need someone else to slide in there at nickel. And Nickerson again was definitely. Do you think Nickerson right now? I know we have McWilliams ahead, but do you think Nickerson is ahead of McWilliams? Like, if the season were to start today, do you think Nickerson is the number 1 nickel, or do you think McWilliams? And I shouldn't say when the season starts today, but your best guess is that when we get to week 1 and McWilliams does what he's supposed to do, is he the backup nickel, or do you think Nickerson will be?
I think right now Nickerson would probably be the backup behind DeJean at nickel, and then could play depending on what the packages are depends on where DeJean lines up, whether he's in the slot or outside or safety.
All right, and as far as the rest of the secondary, Adoree Jackson. That was a free agent signing. Played the last 4 years with the Giants. Not as productive last year. What was the deal with picking him up in free agency?
I think they're looking for someone who's not quite older, but has the veteran experience to maybe come in and help out with some of the younger guys. So he's had an interesting career where I don't think he's quite lived up to his 1st-round pick, but he's always been a solid corner. He's always been a solid number 2, number 3 guy, and I think he's got a pretty decent shot at starting. But I think that cornerback position between him and Ringo are going to be that may be the most contested position battle at training camp, because you look at the difference between Ringo and Jackson. Ringo is 6'2". He is massively tall compared to everyone else in that secondary. Like, there was video of him, breaking down one of the huddles for the defensive backs, and he was just significantly taller than them. So I think the Eagles hope that he can turn out to be something special, and he could end up maybe being that outside starting corner. But Adoree Jackson's got that experience. I think he's been in the league 8 years, entering his 9th year. So, and I think he's still under 30, I believe. So I think it will be kind of an interesting battle. Do they want to go with someone with more experience and does maybe a little bit better in coverage, or do they want to go with the guy with the higher potential but also is really tall, and they can line up Ringo against some of those taller receivers, and he'd be able to kind of battle them on those like jump balls, like in the red zone.
How has he played so far, Ringo?
I've heard good things about him. I mean, it's kind of hard to tell. A lot of guys are playing well right now, but the thing with Ringo and Jackson is they seem to be kind of splitting those 1st-team reps. So I believe like Jackson was starting for like 11-on-11 drills, and then Ringo was starting on the 1st-team reps for like 7-on-7. So they seem to be going back and forth. So there's not like a clear winner. That's why I think this position battle is probably going to be the toughest, because they're both going back and forth at this point, and a decision probably won't be made on who's going to start on the outside until the end of training camp.
So Ringo really hasn't had a lot of extensive experience in that role as being a starter, legitimate number 2 guy on the outside.
I know he had some starts last year. He had a little more playing time just because of some injuries that happened within the secondary. So he's got more experience, obviously, in the defense versus Jackson. Sure. And I think just because of his size, I think the Eagles just want to I
Oh
think
yeah.
they hope that they can use his height and be able to use it to an advantage. But again, does it come down to, do you want to go with the veteran who has more experience and has gone up against
Yep.
better players, or do you want to go with or do you want to lean on potential? And it seems like the Eagles want experience within the defense, but also want to go on potential for those younger players.
Makes sense. Okay. All right. So that's the secondary. Now let's move on and head back to the drafting order and stay on defense, of course, with Ty Robinson. So Robinson was drafted in the 4th round. And it seems like he's a perfect fit with the Eagles, a rotational defensive lineman, very strong kid. I like the kid. I like what I saw out of him at Nebraska. So I think this is a really good pick, and I think he'll fit in really well with the Eagles.
I love Robinson. He may be one of my favorite picks in this draft. The first video they showed last week at OTA was this guy absolutely demolishing those tackling dummies, and it was just awesome to watch. Like he seems to be the prototypical Eagles defensive tackle that they want to see. I don't know if he's necessarily the strongest when it comes down to pass rushing, but he's going to be a great run stopper for them that they are kind of needing. So I think he could fit in perfectly with what the Eagles are doing and be a really good rotational defensive lineman. But I loved everything I've seen out of him so far. I think he's going to be a great fit for this defense, and I definitely see him getting in that rotation, especially on those 1st and 2nd down plays when they're trying to stop the run. He'll be in there to try to clog up those holes.
What can you tell us about the rest of the defensive line? Because they did not go out and add any veterans. So it's really just Ty Robinson. Of course, they lost some significant personnel. So what do you think about how the unit is looking right now?
Yeah, I would say obviously Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis are the class of that defensive line. You look at Jordan Davis, he's actually, Vic Fangio said Davis is in the best shape of his career. Jordan Davis talked about that he's doing Peloton now, and he absolutely loves it because apparently he was trying to have a sexy look to him, and he seems to be in much better shape. I think that's good news for the Eagles. He's been on this team for about 3 to 4 years, and they've been kind of waiting for him to, he's been getting better and better, but last year he kind of took a step back from where they needed him to be. And I think he took a step back because Jalen Carter kind of jumped onto the scene. This guy's an absolute monster. Like, I think Jalen Carter is going to be top 5 defensive lineman in this league for a long time. He's just got a great balance of being able to stop the run and be a pass rusher at his size is incredible to see. So I think they'll be leaning on those two a lot to kind of step up on the defensive line. Everyone else, Morrow, I like as well. He's been getting some playing time last year, and now he's going to be able to step into the starting lineup for the first time in his career. So it'll be interesting to see how he does. I like him more for what he does stopping the run. So, but they're going to put him, I guess, kind of on the outside for the defensive line. So we'll see if he can get some, pass rushing in there. So really outside of that, I think everyone else is just kind of a rotational backup. The Eagles are kind of interesting in their depth right now. That I don't know how much those guys are going to play. I would say Ty Robinson's got the best shot of the backups to really get some significant playing time versus everyone else.
Do you think they'll add because how important it was to rotate those guys? Can you see them adding another veteran?
I don't know about the defensive line. They could possibly add somebody else in, but I think they're kind of stead whole on who they have on their roster right now, and maybe want to see what they do. If they're gonna do anything, it probably won't be till maybe the trade deadline if they feel like they need to get some more help on the defensive line. I don't know. The Eagles this offseason have been kind of weird where they have not been as aggressive as they've been in the last few years of going after big time players. This offseason was about, hey, let's take care of some of those key players who helped us in the Super Bowl. Sure. But the ones that are maybe a little more expensive and maybe they don't want to lean on as much, kind of let them walk in free agency and lean on those guys that are 25 or under.
Okay, let's see. Before we move over to the offense, one more position. It's a big one, of course, and that's edge. There was a draft pick, Powell-Ryland, going with their last pick. And you can understand this. See, this is the difference between production in college and scouting players for the NFL. Because while it's surprising that he lasted as long as he did for an All-American, first-team ACC player, bunch of sacks the last couple of years, the fact is he's he doesn't have the size, and apparently he has really tiny arms. That's our scouting report on Powell-Ryland, but it's true, and this is why guys slip. But the kid's produced, and if you're a football player, you're a football player. Now sometimes that hurts them, and that's why they're drafted that late. But maybe the Eagles got something there with a highly productive kid that they were able to pick up in round 6.
Yeah, I mean, for Howie Roseman and that team, like it doesn't matter what size you are. If you can get to the quarterback and make plays, they're going to put you on the field regardless. So I don't know how much time Powell-Ryland's going to get on the field. He may be in the rotation, but this is a guy that obviously has proven that even with some of the limitations he has with like small arms or anything like that, he can get to the quarterback. Like he can make plays off the edge. And a classic example is, a big topic has been Jeremiah Trotter brought up that Jalen Carter still hasn't even learned how to play defensive line. And he's been in the NFL 2+ years, and he has found a way to make plays. Like for the Eagles, it doesn't matter. If they know, if you can find a way to get from point A to point B, which point B is being to the quarterback, they'll coach you and they'll train you up throughout the years, but just find a way to get to the quarterback and make a play.
All right. So then they go out, well, first off in free agency, and this couple of really interesting additions on the edge are a couple of former second-round draft picks in Uche and Ojulari. Especially Ojulari, because he's actually quietly still been productive. Even though I think a lot of it, even though he's a New York guy, has to do with the fact that the Giants just not very good. So nobody really pays attention. But overall, 22 sacks, had 6 last year. And Uche had that big 11.5 sack season. I think it was his second season with the Patriots. And then was finally traded away from the Patriots to the Chiefs last year. I don't think he did much there. And now the Eagles grab him. So what do you think the idea was getting both of these guys, again, former second-round picks that still seem like there's potential talent there?
I mean, for me, Ojulari is the best free agent signing they had all offseason. This guy, I mean, when I watch the tape, I don't see anything wrong with him. Like he is so fast off the edge. He's got great tackling skills. He can get to the quarterback. Really, the only issue with him is he can't stay healthy. He's missed 22 games over the last 3 years. That's really the only knock on him, is that his durability has, his availability for games has not been there. If he could find a way to stay healthy, he's a starting edge rusher for half the teams in the NFL. So for the Eagles, it was easy to take a chance on him because I'm sure nobody else wanted to pay a guy who's 25, 26 years old and hasn't been able to stay on the field. For the Eagles, it was an easy, cheap option for them to, hey, this is the guy that, even if he doesn't start, he's a rotational guy. Like he's going to go in there and be able to still produce 3 to 6 sacks during the regular season for us. So I think Ojulari, if it wasn't for Jalen Hunt, Ojulari would easily be starting, and I think he's got the capabilities to do it. So, with Josh, he's a rotational guy. I don't think he's going to start. He may step in for Nolan Smith from time to time, but off the edge, this is Nolan Smith's season to really step up and take that Josh Sweat type role and be able to get 8 to 10 sacks easily. Jalen Hunt, I think, will probably be more where Nolan Smith was in 2024, where he'll get his first significant playing time of his career and maybe kind of range between that 5 to 7 sack season as he kind of learns the position. Because Jalen Hunt has kind of talked about, like, I want to focus on the fundamentals. I'm looking at what do the top pass rushers do and what can I do on a technicality basis for the position for me to be a better pass rusher and be better off the edge. So I think this year will be about him kind of playing around with the technicalities of the position and see what he can do to get to the quarterback.
Yeah, because there's still an unknown factor there, of course, and that's the thing. But hey, that's going to add some competition to the edge, and there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, so let us now move on to the offense finally. And let's see, why don't we go ahead and start in order as well? So we'll start along the offensive line. And this is really where there was a lot of impact in the offseason. Starting, of course, with the 3 draft picks, True Kendall, Miles Hinton, and Cameron Williams. Cameron Williams, boy, was he disappointing. I know there's a lot of people a year or two ago thought that he had a really good career ahead of him, and he just did not play well for Texas. Very disappointing. I think he's a 6th-round draft pick because they're still hoping maybe he gets the NFL coaching, and that could take off. Kendall, he's got the bloodlines. Hinton, same thing. So out of these 3 linemen that they drafted, what do you think? It's easy to just say, well, yeah, they like Kendall first because that's who they drafted. But how do you see these guys working in as far as depth on the team?
I think they like all of them in the aspect that these are, athletic, versatile linemen who can, move around and pull and be able to play, maybe not just one side of the offensive line, but on the other. So I don't know what the realistic possibility is of any of them starting or playing, but, the Eagles needed to get younger depth on the offensive line. I think typically in the last few years, they've kind of leaned a little more on older guys to kind of back them up. And then the younger talent that they had they just weren't good enough to start. So, Jeff Stoutland needs to be able to have guys that he can know that it can move around, be athletic, and be able to kind of develop within the next 2 to 3 years. So it's hard to say because this offensive line is so good with their starting lineup that, I don't know how much we're ever going to see out of these other guys. I mean, it's a question of, I think, Hinton's got the most interesting position of them because Lane Johnson gets hurt 2 to 3 times a year. I mean, he's a guaranteed miss 2-3 games with, some kind of lower leg injury. It just seems to always happen. So Hinton's got an opportunity to actually, he may have the best shot of getting at least 1 or 2 starts at right tackle. But how much is that going to affect the Eagles when all they do is they can just run the ball to the left side, 30 to 40 times in a game? So I would say I would focus more on Hinton because he's got the best chance of actually getting some playing time. And, Lane Johnson's, getting older and he's getting to the point where he may be looking at, retirement soon.
Sure.
So they need to start thinking about the future. So Hinton's the one that I think they got to really develop the hardest with and make sure that he's prepared to, when that day comes for Lane Johnson to retire, he's got to take over.
Well, I'll tell you right now, and you could book it, Eagle fans, in about 2 or 3 years when Lane Johnson retires, it's going to be Holland Pierce that's going to be the starting right tackle of the Eagles. I'm a Rutgers fan, and I've watched every Rutgers game that Holland Pierce has played. And I think it is just absolutely ridiculous that this kid wasn't drafted. With how teams are constantly looking for offensive linemen, young offensive linemen, and with a kid like this with his measurables who played Big Ten football. And let me tell you, he played against the Ohio State's best, the Michigan best, all the best, and he never looked out of place. Never looked silly. Just got better and better. But, he can't do this, he can't do that. Just like we talked about with Ryland on defense, and even like what you said with Carter. The kid can play. That's all that matters. And the kid can play. And I'm just telling you right now, he's going to be a starting caliber, and he's not even going to just be a starter. He's going to be a really good starter in the NFL in about 3 or 4 years.
I mean, the crazy part of Pierce when I watch him, this guy's 6'8", 340 pounds. He moves so well for his size. Like, he is the prototypical offensive lineman that Stoutland wants, because he can end up being a lot like Jordan Mailata, where these are like big dudes, but they can move. Like, they're deceptively athletic and fast, which is what is needed in this offensive line, because you do a lot of pulling, a lot of, blocking to the outside. So you need guys who can, move around. Like, that's what made Lane Johnson such a great right tackle, is that this is a guy that was I believe a tight end in college, so he was already athletic as is. So you need to have athletic guys in that line. And Pierce, like, man, and he's been the one, I think, undrafted free agent that everyone has talked about being their favorite on the Eagles. I really hope he gets an opportunity to make the roster. I think he probably ends up being a practice squad guy, but I agree.
I
He
don't
can
know about
develop
that.
into some.
You put him on that practice squad, he'll be gone. You'll lose him.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with that. It's interesting.
So,
I mean, yeah, he looks great on tape though. Like, that dude is massive, but man, he can move. And
yeah, I think it's a
that's
perfect team for him, just like you said. I think it's the perfect spot for him. And who knows? Maybe he'll be the starting left tackle in a few years, and Hinton will be the starting right tackle. That could definitely be the case as well. But yeah, that's a player obviously to watch, no question about it. And then they signed before the draft Lamb, Pryor, and Green. Well, they traded for Green. So talk a little bit about that trade, because Kenyon Green never should have been drafted where he was. That's not his fault. That's Casario's fault, who's been awful drafting offensive linemen. Absolutely awful. He's done a lot of good in Houston, but he can't draft offensive linemen to save for his life. So he trades Green to the Eagles. And what did the Eagles like, or at least want to give Green a shot for? Because even as a backup, he may have to come in and play.
I felt like this was a move that was more about getting rid of CJ Gardner-Johnson and trying to pick up a draft pick than anything Kenyon Green could actually do. Now, I think Kenyon Green actually makes a really good backup, because I think there's potential there, but he was just so inconsistent as a starter. Like, he would make little small mistakes, and he had trouble being consistent while he was on the field. So I don't know if Kenyon Green, like, I know a lot of people talk about like him maybe competing with Tyler Steen for that right guard position.
Hell no.
I know that's technically, yeah. I was going to put it more elegantly, but you kind of put it perfectly. Like, I know, like, people want to make a position battle out of it, but Tyler Steen's taken all the right guard snaps, and he's going to be the starter. Like, he knows his offensive line. He's actually developed pretty well. He's gotten better over the last couple of years. So this was his position to have from the beginning. And I don't think there's an actual position battle, even though people are going to talk about it. So we're going to have to report on it regardless. But Tyler Steen's going to end up being the starter right guard. So I don't think there's any controversy. And I don't think Green has a legitimate shot at starting. But he'll make a really good backup on this team and can step in and help out.
By the way, if anybody has any questions or comments during the live broadcast, go ahead and throw them in the text box there. We have one, but we'll get to that in just a little bit because we're talking offense right now, but we will get to the question regarding Smail Munden. Okay, so let's move on to the next pick in order, and that would be the quarterback. And this is actually the last one. So Kyle McCord. Yeah. Wow. To get Kyle McCord in round 6. I mean, nobody, it would not have been a shock to me if Kyle McCord, I mean, the whole thing with everything that's going with Shuck in New Orleans, I don't know what to make of that. I just don't. I mean, I know there's some good to like about Shuck, but I would not have been surprised, let's just put it this way, if Shuck would have been a 6th-round draft pick and McCord would have been a 2nd-round draft pick. Yeah, I mean, was this more of, wow, we've got the extra pick, the guy's this talented, he's ahead of everyone else on our board, we might as well take him? Or was this something that they targeted to try to add to the quarterback room late in the draft? Because Tanner McKee is a player that I remember talking about a couple of years on our lads with a scout about keep an eye on Tanner McKee as a future quarterback that might be able to make a name for himself as a late round draft pick.
I'm going to try to explain it in a way that I think will make sense. So I don't know if you've ever seen the meme of The Office where Pam has 2 pictures that she needs to pick from, and she's like, I don't see no difference. that's Kyle McCord and Tanner McKee. Like, I feel like Kyle McCord is Tanner McKee from a couple years ago. Like the Eagles Howie Roseman kind of brought this up when Jalen Hurts was first picked, and everyone kind of freaked out, including myself, I'll be honest. And he said, like, I want to be a quarterback factory. Like, it doesn't matter who the quarterback is. I don't care if they can be a starter or anything. I want to load up on quarterbacks. And I feel like that's what this is. Because I'll be honest, a lot of people like Dorian Thompson-Robinson to be the backup. I just don't. I mean, this guy's completed 55% of his passes, 1 touchdown, 10 interceptions.
No chance.
I would be shocked if he makes this roster. Like, Kyle McCord will be in the exact same position Tanner McKee was a couple years ago, where he's going to be the third string for about a year or two. Tanner McKee is going to get an opportunity to start somewhere else or get more money as a backup somewhere else, and then Kyle McCord's going to move up and be the backup. That's exactly the career trajectory he's about to take. Like, I don't understand, like, even at OTAs right now, like Dorian Thompson-Robinson is getting the third string reps. And I understand, like, he's a veteran, so maybe you want to give him some reps. But, I mean, Kyle McCord is just a pure passer, man. Yeah. I mean, this guy can sling it. He looks so good at Syracuse. And I think when he was at Ohio State, I felt like they kind of held him back from being able to reach where he could be with his potential. And Syracuse just told him, hey, let it loose. Let's go have some fun. Yeah. And he actually got to show off his skills. So I love the Kyle McCord pick. I think he's a perfect third-string quarterback for this team, and I think eventually he'll back up Jalen Hurts in about a year or two when Tanner McKee gets a buttload of money to either be a backup somewhere else or get an opportunity to start.
Yeah, he's going to get that opportunity, absolutely, and I'm looking forward to it. He's one of those little nice sleeper quarterbacks that I think will, and I think you've seen it. He's gonna have a shot. Okay, so the only positions we haven't covered, running back and receiver. So A.J. Dillon was a notable pickup. Obviously, it's behind Saquon, who, by the way, I predicted would win Comeback Player of the Year. Thank you very much. So anyway, A.J. Dillon was obviously banged up last year for the first time in his career, missed all of the season. What did they want to do with Dillon there? Shipley was a 4th-round pick last year. Also, Montreal Johnson was a nice UDFA to pick up. He's somebody maybe to keep an eye on from the practice squad probably. But tell us a little bit about the depth right now at running back.
I would say also watch out for Sean Jarrett Powell, another undrafted free agent. He's getting reps at kick returner. So if he's gonna make the roster, he's probably gonna make it through special teams because they need to find a replacement there in the punt return game. And I don't think they want like Will Shipley or anything like that to be at that position because the backup running back position is so fascinating because I mean, A.J. Dillon can play. I mean, before the neck injury last year, he had 3 straight seasons of at least 600 yards rushing. Like this guy can play at a high level. He might be able to start for a couple of teams. So I think he's a great backup. But I would say on the flip side, I wouldn't be surprised if Will Shipley wins that backup job. I think they really like his athleticism. He's done a really good job in the passing game at OTAs. From what I'm hearing, I mean, he's getting 3 to 5 targets a day in the passing game, and he's catching all of them. Like, I think they like that athletic ability that Shipley has. So it wouldn't shock me if he makes it. And then, man, I mean, I think, I know you got Avery Williams there too. Apparently they're gonna list him as a wide receiver, from what I read. So yeah, because originally it was going to be return specialist, but it looks like he might be playing wide receiver. But he I don't know if he'll get any rotation at running back. I think the running back position is just so deep right now that they may have to move him to wide receiver. But really, Avery Williams is a return specialist. He may be just like a Devin Hester, where he's just going to be a returner. But if they need to throw him in a receiver, they'll do it. So Avery Williams is kind of an interesting guy to watch out for. Powell, I think, watch out for. He could make the squad if he's a really good kick returner. So
who else is battling for that job? Because it's Williams, it's Powell. Is there anyone else notable?
Those are the 2 right now. I think there's some other ones I can't remember off the top of my head. Who else is gonna?
Is Morin gonna get a chance as well as a CFA?
I have not heard him at returner, but
Okay.
that would actually make sense. He was a really good one at Wake Forest. I actually, when I wrote an article on my favorite undrafted free agents, Morin was one of them that I really liked. But I haven't heard anything about him, so I don't know how much playing time he's getting. I don't even know if he's gonna, make it far into, um, training camp because I know like,
Sure.
Giles Jackson is another one to watch out for a receiver. I think he's been getting some
Oh,
special teams play too. So and Jackson he had a really good season at Washington last year. He runs a 4.42, 40-yard dash. So he's got quick speed. He's a little under height. He's 5'8", so he'd probably be more of a slot receiver, but he might be somebody that could maybe sneak in with a practice squad or might be able to get in on special teams because he's fast. So he might be able to get his foot in the door that way.
and speaking of receivers, anything new on Wilson and Smith? A couple of draft picks from last year.
I like Smith personally. I just feel like he's a more consistent receiver than Johnny Wilson was. My problem with Wilson is I just felt like he had too many drops. He's just not consistent enough, even though like I think the Eagles are just praying that he's like Ringo for the offensive side. Like he's a really tall receiver. They want him to work out because he would be a great goal line jump ball 50-50 type guy.
Didn't they have that kid from Stanford that was the same thing that was failed? I forget what his name was.
JJ Whiteside. Yeah.
Yes.
We could have had DK Metcalf. That's who we picked over DK Metcalf. So
really?
As Eagles,
Wow.
yes. As Eagle fans, we like to forget that moment.
Oh, no wonder. Okay, got it.
So yeah, I think they hope that Wilson can be that guy. To me personally, I just didn't see it last year. I mean, I think he had like one touchdown catch, which was nice, but he's just not consistent enough. Like he doesn't have the best hands. I actually like Smith a little bit better because he's more consistent. But it sounds like the two of them have actually done pretty well because AJ Brown and Devontae Smith have not been practicing. Devontae Smith hasn't been at OTAs, and Brown's been there, but I don't think he's actually practiced. So they've seemed to be getting more reps, and they seem to be doing well so far. So I'm sure they'll both make the roster. And to me, I can see them getting more playing time than like Terrence Marshall, who I feel like Marshall is just a veteran body to put in there.
Yeah. And what about tight end? Goddard's just about staying healthy. And by the way, I did get the opportunity to interview him for the Ourlads Network when he came out of the draft. He was one of those players that I remember interviewing him because he was coming from the FCS school, and it was always nice to try to target those kids. But how about the depth at tight end? Is there a player? I mean, we know about a couple of the guys, and they did add a couple of free agents there too. But has anybody either stuck out as far as depth that can take over that number 2 role, or is there one of those players that you just heard that the Eagles are really high on?
Well, Dallas will be number 1. Grant will be number 2 for sure. Grant
definitely locked in number 2. Got it.
Yeah. He had a good season last year when he stepped in for Dallas Goedert when he was hurt. So I think it's going to be more about who makes that number 3 spot, whether it's Kylan or Harrison Bryant. Both are veterans. Both can play the position. Nick Muse, I've heard, has had a good camp or good OTAs so far. So he may be a dark horse to get in there. But I think it's going to be Grant versus Bryant for that final number 3 tight end spot on who they want to go with.
Yeah, I remember. I was just trying to double check. I forget what it was, but it must have been the concussions, because I remember when Calcaterra came out that there was a lot to like there, but you were wondering whether or not he was actually going to be able to play anymore in the NFL because he had some serious, and I didn't know what it was, and I guess it was the concussions. So I'm assuming he hasn't had any of that problem in the NFL, which is great to hear.
No, he hasn't played as much up until last year, and then he kind of got thrusted into the starting lineup when Dallas Goedert was hurt. And yeah, he played really well to the point. Like, I think that's why there was so much talk about should the Eagles trade or release Dallas Goedert during the offseason, because Grant played so well that they're like, maybe he could end up being an eventual starter for this team once Goddard's gone. Because I don't know if Dallas Goedert's going to be on the team after this year. That'd be disappointing because I think he's great. But, they did restructure his contract, so they did save some money. I think they cut off like $4 million off of his pay that he was going to get this year. So they were able to save some kind of money. But I think next offseason will be interesting to see if he re-signs with the team or jumps elsewhere. My assumption is I think he probably ends up signing somewhere else. Grant probably moves up in the starting lineup, and they probably go to the draft to find a tight end within those first 2 to 3 rounds.
And before we go, like I said, let's go ahead and take a look at one of the questions that we have here tonight. Eagles has landed Super Bowl LAX champions. Yes, indeed. Good evening. What are your thoughts on Smail Mondon regarding his fit in this defense?
I mean, Mondon is, I guess we talked about, we don't want to bring up, the obvious, but he's a Georgia guy, and the Eagles love their Georgia defensive players. And the one thing that's great about those Georgia defensive players is they're all athletic. So I think he'll be able to, come in and, be a good rotational guy. He won't get a lot of playing time in year one, but he's a guy that, he may end up getting more playing time depending on the severity of Campbell and Dean. I do think Campbell and Dean will probably play to start the season, or if they do, they may miss a game or two. It sounds like Campbell will be healthy by mid-August. Dean will probably be healthy by mid to late August, maybe early September. So he may miss a game or two. So that'll be something to kind of watch out with the both of them. So if they're both out, then Mondon might step in and get some more playing time right off the bat. He might rotate in with Jeremiah Trotter Jr. But yeah, I mean, the Eagles love their Georgia guys because they're all athletic beasts that can kind of do a little bit of everything. So I can see him get some rotation, get some playing time this year. He'll probably be very big on special teams. I can see him having a big role in special teams and maybe replace Jeremiah Trotter Jr. in that spot.
Yeah, and if you missed it, we it's probably because you came in late, but that's the very first position we talked about was way back early on the show at linebacker. And of course, these live shows will be available on demand, and we're going to have links in the description of how you can check out all of Anthony's work. Of course, Anthony, we're going to try to limit it to the Eagles, but there will be a few other things, or else we'd have a big,
it'd be too much. Yeah, it'd be too much.
A big library of links. So we're going to make sure that we do that. Do you have your own weekly podcast, anything specific that you do either off season or during the season?
I am actually in the process of starting my own podcast. Hasn't booted up yet, but it'll probably start within the next week or two, where I will be talking NFL, UFL, CFL stuff. So awesome. that's in the works soon. So I'll make an announcement on that on my X page and hopefully soon.
Makes sense. Don't limit yourself when you've got all that content all over the place. Anthony, before I let you go, and we will talk about this at training camp for sure, right around preseason, but give me is there a player that fans, again, more than likely outside of the Eagles, unless you haven't been paying a lot of attention this summer yet to the Eagles or this spring to the Eagles, but anything regarding a player, because they do have a bunch of guys, who have been here for a couple of years that are trying to break through. I've mentioned guys like Scene, and there's even Eli Ricks in secondary. You've already mentioned Nickerson and a few other guys. Are there any other type players that we haven't mentioned that could be interesting this year? Maybe they keep an eye on these guys come training camp, because they may have an opportunity for an increased role in 2025.
If you would have asked me before Vic Fangio's press conference yesterday, I would have said Jalen Hunt makes a lot of sense, just because I just love his raw ability and being able to get some more playing time. He was somebody that even if Bryce Huff was still on the team, I still would want Jalen Hunt to start. But he made a comment about Tristan McCollum, and I just feel like there's something about this guy that I don't think he starts, but he could definitely be in that rotation. He can make plays on special teams. I think he's a great tackler. That might be the difference between him and Makumba, is that I think McCollum is a really good tackler, but I do think there's some cover stuff that he may need to work on. But he's a guy in training camp that I'm going to watch to see how he does and see if there's any word behind Vic Fangio saying this guy is actually in the conversation to start. Yeah,
usually they're not going to single a guy out like that unless there's a reason. The kid is proving himself, and it's sort of like a boy. praising you to everybody to say, hey, I got your back. You're going to keep playing like this. I'm going to make a note of that to everybody. Special teams, by the way, Hughlett, new long snapper. I mean, this guy, a kid anymore. He was at Cleveland for 10 years and got injured last year, went on IR, and I guess that was it for him. So he became a free agent, and the Eagles picked him up. Have you heard anything there? Is he definitely the guy now? He's going to be the long snapper for the Eagles?
For the time being, yeah, looks like he's going to be the long snapper. He's got a ton of experience, so I don't think there's really any concern at that position. There's not been much talk about it, but like you said, he's got a resume that's impressive. That he's been able to be a long snapper for 10 plus years. So I don't think there's any real major concern with him. And then there's been not a lot of talk about like Jake Elliott or Brady Mann on how they're going to. Elliott, I think they're kind of hoping maybe we'll get off to a better start this year and be more consistent, because he really struggled like the beginning part of the season, but when the postseason came around, he was on fire and he was back to his old ways.
Okay.
So I think they're kind of hoping that he can, be that consistent kicker. Otherwise, there might be a possibility that they may have to look in free agency for somebody if he can't play, if he can't get off to a better start than he did last year.
And what about Mann? Because as a Jet fan, Jets drafted him, and we just kept waiting and waiting and waiting, and it never happened. And but he's a kicker. It's like goalies in the NHL. You leave, and then sometimes you latch someone else, and boom, a different coach, a different scenery, all of a sudden. But is he penciled in or is he locked in as the punter for 2025?
Yeah, I would say he's locked in. I mean, he's consistent. I mean, he does. I think he averages 41 to 42 yards per punt. Like, I think he's just one of those average punters that I don't think he's the best punter in the league, but I don't think he's the worst either. Like, he's a guy that will go in there and get the job done. So I don't see any outside competition coming in and taking the job from him. I can see him staying at that punter position.
Excellent, Anthony. I appreciate it. Great to talk about the Eagles finally, and great job again. Hopefully we'll be able to do this again. We'll have links in the description, so how you can track Anthony down for his Eagles work, and who knows what else. Podcast coming soon, so check that out. Anthony, thanks for doing this, and we'll talk some Eagles football in a couple of months.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Greg. Appreciate it.
You got it. And that's it, I believe, this week for our interviews. Next week, we start off with the Bears, and I think we have 2 or 3 others. So check back with us here on ProLine TV and the RLAS Football Network.